Our republic has a constitution. What the hell? I am the magic eye. I am a private bank. I am taking over. You will obey me. Auditing the Federal Reserve. One of the most difficult things for our government to do is who exactly owns the Federal Reserve. As I said in the previous video, we don't know. We can guess. There are researchers who have done a lot of digging and have come up with lists of names which I think are quite credible. For example, let's first go to the Federal Reserve and see what they say about ownership of the Federal Reserve and what the rules are, so we know where to begin our little investigation. Here is a printout from their website that I took. It says, "Why did Congress want the Federal Reserve to be independent? The intent of Congress in shaping the Federal Reserve Act was to keep politics out of monetary policy. The system is independent of other branches and agencies in the government. It's self-financed and therefore not subjected to congressional budgetary processes." Now, I said in the earlier video, we had a three-part government system set up by the Founding Fathers, who were all very intelligent people and who thought long and hard about how to set up a government. One thing that they did not set up was a central bank. Instead, there's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the courts that decide all the business between the executive and the legislative branches. All the disputes in the system, including financial disputes between the citizens and the government enforcing the laws. To set up a bank that sails above it all in their little triangle with the eyeball in it is unconstitutional. If we were supposed to have some sort of central bank, I am sure the Founding Fathers would have put one in. They didn't. So the Federal Reserve has to pretend that this innovation, which came in 1913, was a wonderful gift because it's not political. This is an outright lie. Everything is political. And what's the most political thing of them all? There are two items: war and finances. The Founding Fathers talked a great deal about that. They did not want a Napoleon to take over and then use our entire country to go on personal conquests looking for this or that or another thing. And they figured by restricting the ability to lend money, they would not be constantly going to war. Well, after the Federal Reserve was created, we had not only one or two wars, we had 2 world wars and a very long Cold War that lasted 50 years. And now we have the War on Terror, which is supposed to be another 50-year war. One that's bankrupting us because we are running up immense debts. So the Federal Reserve is probably the most political operation of them all. It's political on behalf of the owners of the Federal Reserve, which are not the American people, nor Congress, nor even whoever's in the White House. They own who's in the White House. They own who's in Congress. They have a lot of money and they spread it out and they buy people with it, which is why they get to operate in a pseudo non-political environment where they're floating above the rest of us who struggle to get Congress to do something for us. No matter how teeny-weeny it is excruciatingly hard to get Congress to listen to us and to do it. For them, they don't even have to ask. They deliver the orders and Congress goes, "Yes, sir." Only the fear of the mob has gotten Congress activated enough to start doing a tiny bit of work on our behalf. And it's very small. To go on, the Federal Reserve is not owned by anyone, according to the Federal Reserve website. It's not a private profit-making institution. Instead, it's an independent entity within the government having both public purposes and private aspects. As the nation's central bank, the Federal Reserve derives its authority from the U.S. Congress. Now that's an outright lie. Also, they mention private aspects, but they don't tell you what those private parts are. We have public on this side and private on that side. And there's this wall between the two. And the public side can't see the private side. The private side, on the other hand, can see everything that happens in public and even manipulate it. Quite an unfair system, I would say. The central bank has decisions do not have to be ratified by the president or anyone else in the executive or the legislative branches of government. It does not receive funding from the government. And it has longer terms than the president or anyone in the government. Now, that's just utterly ridiculous. This is something that's separate from everything. Again, there's a wall here. We have all the elected officials and the judges who are sometimes elected or appointed by the elected officials. We get to see them do stuff. They're on TV and so on. Then you have this wall. On the other side are the owners of the Federal Reserve. They can manipulate everyone on this side via money and other forms of influence. We can't touch them. We don't even know who they are. How can we touch them? We can only guess. The 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, which were established by Congress as the operating arms of the nation's central banking system, are organized much like private corporations. Well, that's because they are! How ridiculous. Much like. It was designed this way. It leads to some confusion about ownership. I'm not confused. It's obviously a corporation. It's not a branch of the government. It's not part of the Constitution, and it's not part of our legal system, except in a really bizarre way, just like corporations are now given the same status as individuals. Well, our banks are individuals too. They're entities in the eyes of the court. For example, the Reserve Banks issue shares of stock to member banks. However, owning a Reserve Bank stock is quite different from owning stock in a private company. Ooh, you bet. It has power. Power up here. Power to the universe. This is no small piddling power. Okay? The Reserve Banks are not operated for profit. The ownership of a certain amount of stock is, by law, a condition of membership in the system. Oh, you have to own stock in the Federal Reserve. Oh my, I think I'm going to faint. The stock may not be sold, traded, or pledged as security for a loan. Now, do you think the richest people on earth need loans? And when they do want loans, do they go to the Federal Reserve or do they go to the Bank of Japan? Guess where they go. The stock may not be sold, traded, or pledged, and the dividends are there. Guess what? They pay 6% a year. 6%. I save money for various purposes, paying taxes and future repairs on my vehicles and all kinds of things. You know what I get for interest on my money that's hard-earned, that I put in a bank? I get less than 1% now, thanks to the Federal Reserve. 1%. They get 6% every year guaranteed. I would love to have that. Why don't they give it to me? I want one of their stock. Just make me part of the Federal Reserve. I'll be happy. I'll join the ruling elites and go, ha ha ha. I'll do whatever I want. 6%? What are they? Madoff? Madoff used to boast about being able to get 6%. Oh, this is just such an insignificant sum. At least that's what they want us to think at the Federal Reserve's website. It's ridiculous.